Ambassador Chen Mei-lin had served humanity for 30 years. She had faced angry diplomats, hostile aliens, and more than a few assassination attempts. But she had never felt fear quite like this. The summons in her hand carried the seal of the Galactic Council. The charge written beneath it made her blood run cold. Violation of Article 7. Military Limitation Accords. She walked through the great halls of Nexus Prime, her footsteps echoing against floors made from crystallized starlight. The Galactic Council had built this station at the center of known space. It served as neutral ground where all species could meet. The architecture was meant to inspire awe. Today it only reminded Chen of how small humanity still was in the grand scheme of things. 30 years ago, humans had discovered faster than light travel. They had stumbled into a galaxy already filled with ancient civilizations. The elder races had watched humanity's arrival with something between amusement and concern. Humans were young. Humans were reckless. Humans came from a death world where everything tried to kill them, and they had somehow survived anyway. The Galactic Compact had accepted humanity as a provisional member. There were rules. There were limitations. Humanity could trade and explore, but their military power would be restricted. The elder races had maintained peace for 10,000 years. They were not about to let a young species upset that balance. Chen entered the council chamber. It was a massive dome filled with floating platforms. Each platform held representatives from different species. The Arithmeth delegation sat perfectly still, their mechanical bodies gleaming under the artificial lights. They were a species that had long ago abandoned flesh for metal. They calculated everything, felt nothing, and trusted no one. The sovereignty of Keth occupied the largest platform. They were tall beings with skin like polished bronze and eyes that burned with ancient fire. They had ruled 1,000 worlds when humanity was still learning to make tools from stone. Their ambassador, Lord Kethivor, looked down at Chen with undisguised contempt. The weavers were hardest to see. They existed partially in dimensions that human eyes could not perceive. Their platform seemed empty, but Chen knew they were there. They were the eldest of all. They rarely spoke, but when they did, the galaxy listened. Ambassador Chen, Lord Kethivor's voice boomed across the chamber. Humanity stands accused of a serious crime. Your species has constructed a warship that violates every principle of the Military Limitation Accords. How do you answer these charges? Chen took a deep breath. She had known this moment would come. Humanity had kept the secret for almost a decade, but secrets never lasted forever. I request to see the evidence, she said calmly. The Arithmeth representative activated a holographic display. The image that appeared made several delegations gasp. It was a ship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 3 kilometers long, shaped like a blade forged by gods, it hung in space with an elegance that seemed almost alive. Its hull was black, but not the black of painted metal. It was the black of a void, of a place where light went to die. Our patrol encountered this vessel in the outer reaches of your system, the Arithmeth said, its voice carrying no emotion. Before our ships could complete their scans, their sensors overloaded. The energy signature alone was beyond anything in our records. We have calculated that this single vessel carries more firepower than your entire registered fleet combined. Chen looked at the image. She felt a strange pride mixed with her fear. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had actually done it. The ship was called Prometheus. It had taken 15 years to build, hidden in the hollowed core of an asteroid in the Oort cloud. The project had begun after the Kepler massacre, when Recon raiders had descended on 3 human colony worlds. 20 million humans had died while the Galactic Compact did nothing. The elder races had debated and discussed and calculated, and by the time they reached a decision, there was no one left to save. That was when humanity learned the truth. The Compact did not protect them. The Compact controlled them. The rules existed not to maintain peace, but to ensure that younger species could never challenge the elder races. So humanity had decided to build something that would change the equation forever. The Council demands that this vessel be surrendered immediately, Lord Kethivor declared. It will be dismantled, its technology destroyed, and humanity will face appropriate sanctions for this betrayal of trust. You have 30 standard days to comply. Chen looked up at the Sovereignty Ambassador. She thought about the 20 million dead on Kepler. She thought about the countless petitions for protection that the compact had ignored. She thought about every time humanity had begged for help and been told to wait. "Where was Article 7 when our colonies burned?" she asked. The chamber fell silent. Lord Kethavor's eyes flared with anger. "That is irrelevant to these proceedings." "Is it?" Chen's voice grew stronger. "For 30 years we have followed your rules. We have limited our military. We have trusted the compact to protect us. And what did we receive in return? Nothing. Our people died while this council debated procedure." "The situation was complex," the Arithmeth representative said. "The Frecken had legitimate territorial claims that required careful consideration." "Legitimate claims?" Chen laughed bitterly. "They murdered children. They burned hospitals. They recorded the screams and sold them as entertainment. And you speak of legitimate claims?" "Ambassador Chen," Lord Kethavor's voice was ice cold, "your emotional outburst does not change the facts. Humanity has violated the accords. You will comply with our demands, or you will face the consequences." Chen straightened her spine. She was not a soldier. She was not a warrior. But in that moment, she understood what the builders of the Prometheus had known from the beginning. Sometimes the only way to earn respect was to demand it. "Humanity will consider your request," she said, "but I cannot promise compliance. That decision rests with those above my authority." She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, she could hear the angry voices of the elder races. They were not used to being defied. They had grown comfortable in their power, confident that no younger species would dare challenge them. They had forgotten something important about humans. Humans were born on a world that tried to kill them every single day. They had clawed their way to the stars through fire and blood and stubborn refusal to die. And when someone pushed them, they did not back down. They pushed back. Far from Nexus Prime, in the cold depths of space, the Prometheus drifted silently. Its captain stood on the bridge, watching the stars through viewports that were not made of glass, but of force fields that could withstand the heart of a sun. Captain Yusuf Okonkwo was a tall man with gray at his temples and scars on his hands. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 20 years before being recruited for this mission. He had lost his sister on Kepler. He had watched the recordings of her death, forcing himself to witness every terrible second. He had sworn an oath that no human would ever die like that again. "Captain," his first officer said, "we have received Ambassador Chen's report. The Council has given us 30 days to surrender." Okonkwo nodded slowly. He had expected this. The Prometheus had been designed for many purposes, but remaining hidden forever was not one of them. Eventually, the galaxy would learn what humanity had built. The question had always been what would happen next. "An Earth's response?" he asked. "Classified orders, sir. Direct from the United Earth Command." Okonkwo took the data chip and inserted it into his private terminal. He read the message 3 times, making sure he understood every word. Then he deleted it and turned to face his crew. The bridge of the Prometheus was filled with the best humanity had to offer. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, all of them chosen for this moment. They had trained for years in secret. They had left their families behind, knowing they might never return. They had accepted this burden because someone had to. "Our orders are clear," Okonkwo said. "The Prometheus will not be surrendered. It will not be dismantled, and it will not be found." His crew nodded. They had known this was coming too. "Take us into Deep Fold," the captain ordered. "We disappear until further notice. No emissions, no communications, no trace. As far as the galaxy is concerned, this ship no longer exists." The Prometheus began to move. Its engines made no sound, produced no exhaust, left no trail. It simply folded the space around it and slipped through dimensions that had no names. In seconds it was gone, vanished from every sensor and scanner in the galaxy. The elder races would search for it. They would send their best hunters and their most advanced technology. They would offer rewards and make threats. But they would not find it, because humanity had not just built a powerful ship. They had built something that broke the rules of reality itself. The Prometheus existed partially outside normal space, in a place where the laws of physics were merely suggestions. It could appear anywhere, strike without warning, and vanish before anyone knew what had happened. The galaxy had told humanity to stay weak. Humanity had chosen a different path, and now the galaxy would have to deal with the consequences. In his private quarters, Captain Okonkwo looked at a photograph on his wall. It showed a young woman with his eyes and his mother's smile. His sister, 2 weeks before the Kepler massacre. She had been a teacher. She had loved children and poetry and long walks under strange suns. "I promised you," he whispered. "No more. Never again." The Prometheus sailed on through the void between dimensions, carrying the hopes and fears of an entire species. Whatever came next, humanity would face it on their own terms. The war for the future had begun. 2 weeks after the ultimatum, the Prometheus had become a ghost story. Ships searched the human territories from one end to the other. Probes scanned every asteroid, every moon, every pocket of empty space where a vessel might hide. The Arithmeth calculated 10,000 possible locations and sent hunters to each one. They found nothing. In the halls of Nexus Prime, the elder races argued about what this meant. Some believed humanity had destroyed the ship themselves, choosing to eliminate the evidence rather than face punishment. Others thought it had never been real at all, perhaps a hologram designed to frighten the compact into giving humanity better terms. Only the Weavers remained silent. They knew something the others did not. They had been watching humanity since the beginning, and they understood that young species were capable of things the elder races had forgotten long ago. Things like hope, things like desperation, things like the absolute refusal to accept defeat. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Captain Okonkwo studied reports from across the galaxy. The ship existed in a state that had no proper name. It was not invisible. It was not cloaked. It simply occupied a space that other dimensions could not see. The crew had taken to calling it the Fold, though the scientists preferred more technical terms that no one else could pronounce. Chief Engineer Adaora Nwachukwu walked onto the bridge. She was a small woman with hands that had built miracles and eyes that saw solutions where others saw only problems. She had designed half of the Prometheus herself, and she knew its systems better than anyone alive. "Captain," she said, "we have received word from our contacts in the fringe territories. The Frecken are moving." Okonkwo's jaw tightened. The Frecken Dominion had been quiet since the Kepler massacre. The Compact had done nothing to punish them. Some said they had been quietly rewarded for reminding humanity of its place. Now, with humanity apparently in crisis, they saw an opportunity. "How many ships?" the captain asked. "3 battle groups. They are heading toward the outer colonies. Our people there have almost no defenses." Okonkwo closed his eyes. This was exactly what the Prometheus had been built to prevent. Humanity's enemies thought the disappearance of the ship meant weakness. They thought humans were hiding because they were afraid. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Which colonies?" he asked. "New Singapore, Frontier's Edge, and Harvest End." Nwachukwu paused. "Harvest End has 2 million people, Captain, mostly farmers and their families. They have 3 patrol boats for the entire system." The captain looked at his crew. They all understood what he was about to order. They had trained for this moment for years. But training was different from reality. This would be the first time the Prometheus revealed itself to the galaxy. Whatever happened next would shape the future of humanity forever. "Set course for Harvest End," Okonkwo said. "We go to the colony that needs us most. The Frecken want to send a message to humanity. We will send one back." The Prometheus folded space around itself and vanished. It would reappear thousands of light years away in less than a heartbeat. This was perhaps the ship's most terrifying capability. Normal faster-than-light travel took time and left traces. The Prometheus did not travel at all. It simply decided to be somewhere else, and the universe rearranged itself to match. In the weapons bay, Lieutenant Commander James Whitmore ran final checks on systems that should not exist. The Prometheus carried armaments that violated not just the Compact's rules, but what most species believed was physically possible. There were weapons that rewrote molecular bonds, turning enemy hulls into vapor. There were others that folded space around targets, crushing them in dimensions they could not perceive. And there were the strange devices that Whitmore privately called the switches, which could simply turn things off at the quantum level. He did not fully understand how these weapons worked. Neither did anyone else on the ship, including the scientists who had built them. They had been designed by artificial intelligences that humanity had created and then carefully forgotten. The Prometheus was the product of minds that thought in ways humans could never match. It was a child of desperation, born from the ashes of 20 million dead. Harvest's End appeared in the viewports without warning. One moment, there was only the endless dark of folded space. The next, a green and blue world hung before them, surrounded by the ugly shapes of wrecking warships. The attack had already begun. Plasma fire rained down on the planet's surface. Cities burned, ships fell from orbit. The 3 patrol boats that defended the colony were scattered debris. And the Vrecken fleet continued its bombardment, methodical and thorough, killing civilians with the same casual efficiency that had marked the Kepler massacre. Captain Okonkwo watched the destruction with a cold fury that burned in his chest. He had seen recordings of what the Vrecken had done to his sister. He had heard her screams. He had sworn that he would not become a monster like them. But in this moment, with innocent people dying before his eyes, he understood why vengeance was such a powerful force. "Open a channel to the Vrecken fleet," he ordered. "All frequencies. I want every ship to hear this." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." "Vrecken vessels, this is Captain Yusuf Okonkwo of the United Earthship Prometheus. You are attacking protected human colonies. You will cease fire immediately, power down your weapons, and prepare to be escorted out of this system. You have 30 seconds to comply." For a moment, there was only silence. Then the Vrecken commander's voice crackled through the speakers, harsh with mockery. "The famous ghost ship. We were wondering when you would appear. You are 1 vessel against 40. Your threats are meaningless. Surrender now, and we might let your crew live long enough to watch your homeworld burn." Okonkwo looked at Whitmore. The weapons officer's hands hovered over controls that could end the Vrecken fleet in seconds. It would be so easy. 1 command and 40 ships would cease to exist. Justice would be served. The dead would be avenged. But that was not why they were here. "Lieutenant Commander," the captain said, "execute Protocol Mercy. Non-lethal engagement only." Whitmore nodded. His fingers danced across the controls. The Prometheus did not fire weapons. It did not launch missiles or activate energy beams. Instead, it simply reached out with fields that should not exist and touched every Vrecken ship simultaneously. On 40 bridges, every light went dark. Every engine died. Every weapon powered down. Every computer screen went blank. The Vrecken fleet became a collection of metal boxes drifting helplessly in space. Their crews were alive. Their ships were intact. But every system had been turned off at the most fundamental level, switched from on to off as easily as a human might flip a light switch. The entire engagement took 11 seconds. Captain Okonkwo opened the channel again. "Vrecken fleet, your vessels have been disabled. Your crews are unharmed. Your life support will continue to function. A human salvage fleet will arrive within 6 hours to tow you to a safe location where you will be held until diplomatic negotiations can begin." He paused, letting his words sink in. On 40 ships, Vrecken warriors stared at dead controls in shock and disbelief. They had expected a battle. They had expected death and glory in the screams of their enemies. They had not expected this. "We could have killed you," Okonkwo continued. "Every single one of you. Your shields meant nothing. Your weapons meant nothing. Your entire fleet could not have scratched our hull. We had every reason to destroy you. Your people murdered 20 million of ours. We have not forgotten. We will never forget." His voice hardened. "But we are not you. We do not murder helpless prisoners. We do not slaughter children for entertainment. We do not become the monsters we fight against. Remember this moment. Remember that you are alive because we chose mercy over vengeance. And remember that if you ever attack our people again, we might not be so kind." The channel closed. The bridge of the Prometheus was silent. Nwachukwu was the first to speak. "Captain, we are receiving transmissions from Harvest's End. The colonists are calling us saviors. They are asking for our names so they can name their children after us." Okonkwo shook his head. "Tell them we are just doing our duty. Tell them to help the wounded and mourn the dead. And tell them that humanity will never abandon them again." He turned away from the viewport, where 40 disabled warships drifted among the stars. He had done what needed to be done. He had shown the galaxy that humans were not prey to be hunted. But he felt no joy in this victory, only a grim satisfaction in the knowledge that this was just the beginning. On Nexus Prime, the news spread like fire. The Prometheus was real. It had appeared from nowhere, disabled an entire battle fleet without killing a single enemy, and vanished again. The Compact's leaders gathered in emergency sessions, their voices sharp with fear and anger. The Arithmeth calculated threat assessments and reached conclusions that made their circuits burn. The sovereignty of Keth demanded immediate action, calling for a coalition to destroy humanity before they became unstoppable. The Weavers watched and waited, curious to see what would happen next. Only the humans understood what had really changed. It was not just that they had a powerful ship. It was that they had chosen to use that power with restraint. In a galaxy ruled by force, they had demonstrated something unexpected: mercy. The elder races did not know what to make of it. Mercy was weakness. Mercy was foolishness. Mercy was what you showed when you could not win. But the Prometheus could have won. It could have annihilated the Frecken fleet with a thought. Instead, it had let them live. This was more frightening than any weapon. This was a species that did not play by the rules the galaxy understood, and that meant everything was about to change. Far from the debates and the fear, the Prometheus sailed on through dimensions that had no names. Its crew celebrated quietly, knowing that they had done something good. They had saved 2 million lives. They had shown the galaxy what humanity could become. But Captain Okonkwo sat alone in his quarters, staring at his sister's photograph. He had won today. He had saved the colonists and spared the enemy, and proven that humans were better than those who had tried to destroy them. It should have felt like victory. Instead, he felt only the weight of what was coming. The Compact would not accept this challenge. They would respond with overwhelming force, and when they did, the Prometheus would have to make harder choices. Mercy was a powerful message, but Okonkwo knew that mercy had limits, and he feared the day when those limits would be tested. The news from Harvest's End changed everything. For the first time in galactic history, a younger species had humiliated an elder power without firing a lethal shot. The Vrecken Dominion raged in shame. The sovereignty of Keth demanded justice. And behind closed doors, the leaders of the Compact faced a truth they had avoided for centuries. Humanity had surpassed them, not gradually, not through slow advancement that could be monitored and controlled. Humanity had leaped centuries ahead in a single generation. They had built weapons that the elder races could not understand, powered by principles that defied what the galaxy believed was possible. And they had done it in secret, right under the Compact's watchful eyes. On Nexus Prime, Lord Kethivor stood before a gathering of species that had never met in the same room before. There were the Arithmeth, cold and calculating. There were the Frecken, humiliated and hungry for revenge. There were a dozen others, some ancient enemies, some old allies, all united by a single fear. Humanity must be stopped, Kethivor declared. Not punished, not limited, stopped, permanently. The Arithmeth representative spoke in its measured mechanical voice. Our calculations suggest that the Prometheus represents technology at least 400 years beyond our current capabilities. If humanity is allowed to continue, they will dominate the galaxy within 2 generations. Then we destroy them now, a Vrecken admiral growled, before they become unstoppable. How? Someone asked. They have a ship we cannot defeat. Kethivor smiled, though there was no warmth in it. One ship can be anywhere, but it cannot be everywhere. The Prometheus cannot protect every human world simultaneously. While it guards one system, we attack another. We force them to choose which of their children to save. The plan took shape over hours of debate. A coalition would form, drawing ships from every species that feared humanity's rise. 4,000 warships would mass at the border of human space, not to fight the Prometheus directly, but to threaten Earth itself. They built their weapon to protect their colonies, Kethivor explained, but their true weakness is their homeworld. 3 billion humans live on Earth. It is the heart of their civilization. Threaten that, and they will have no choice but to submit. The Arithmeth performed calculations. The probability of human surrender is 47%. The probability of successful military action against Earth if they refuse is 82%. And the Prometheus? Someone asked. Will be neutralized. Kethavor gestured, and a hologram appeared. It showed a device of alien design, all curves and impossibilities, looking like something dreamed rather than built. The Weavers have provided us with a reality anchor. It is an ancient technology, older than most of our civilizations. It locks space into its natural state and prevents the kind of dimensional manipulation that the Prometheus uses. The coalition members studied the device with hungry eyes. This was their answer. This was how they would bring humanity to heal. Far from Nexus Prime, the Prometheus received reports of the gathering fleet. Captain Okonkwo stood on the bridge with his senior officers, watching the numbers climb. 1,000 ships, 2,000, 3,000. The coalition grew larger by the hour. They are calling it the Fleet of Justice, Whitmore said with bitter humor. 4,000 warships to punish humanity for the crime of defending ourselves. Chief Engineer Nwachukwu shook her head. This is not about justice. This is about fear. We showed them that their power has limits, and they cannot accept that. Ambassador Chen's face appeared on the main screen. She looked exhausted, her eyes shadowed by sleepless nights of failed diplomacy. I have tried every channel, she said, every backdoor, every favor, every alliance we built over 30 years. Nothing works. They have united against us. The Weavers? Okonkwo asked. Silent. They have not spoken since this began. Some believe they support the coalition secretly. Others think they are simply watching to see what happens. The captain turned to his tactical officer. If the fleet enters human space, can we stop them? The officer hesitated. We can engage them, sir. We can destroy them. But 4,000 ships attacking on multiple fronts simultaneously would overwhelm our response capability. We cannot be everywhere at once. So if they attack Earth while we defend the colonies, we lose. And if we defend Earth while they attack the colonies, we lose. Yes, sir. They have designed this specifically to counter our advantages. Okonkwo closed his eyes. He had known this moment would come. The Prometheus was powerful. But power alone was not enough. The galaxy had decided that humanity was a threat, and the galaxy had more ships, more resources, and more worlds than humanity could ever match. There was only one way out. One terrible, brilliant, desperate move that might save everything or doom them all. Connect me to Earth Command, he said. Highest priority? I need to speak with the Joint Chiefs directly. The conversation that followed was classified beyond any normal security level. When it ended, Okonkwo walked alone through the corridors of his ship. He passed crew members who looked at him with concern. He ignored them. He needed time to think. The Prometheus had been built with many capabilities. Some were obvious, like its weapons and its shields and its impossible drive. But there were others hidden deep in its programming that only the ship's designers knew about. They had anticipated this moment. They had known that humanity might one day face an enemy they could not defeat through force alone. So they had built in a final option, a last resort, something that would change everything if it was ever used. Okonkwo stopped at a door marked with symbols that no other human could read. He placed his hand on a scanner, spoke a code phrase that had been burned into his memory, and waited as layers of security verified his identity. The door opened. Inside was a small room with a single console. On the screen, 3 words glowed in soft blue light. Revelation. Protocol armed. The captain stared at those words for a long time. Then he returned to the bridge. Set course for the Helion Gap, he ordered. We intercept the coalition fleet before they enter human space. Sir, Whitmore asked carefully, what are our rules of engagement? Okonkwo turned to face his crew. These people had given everything for this mission. They had left their families, their homes, their entire lives behind. They trusted him to lead them through whatever came next. They deserved to know the truth. We are not going to fight them, he said. Not the way they expect. We are going to offer them something they cannot refuse. And if they refuse it anyway, we are going to change the galaxy forever. He saw the confusion in their eyes. He wished he could explain more. But some things had to unfold in their own time. Trust me, he said. I know this seems impossible, but humanity did not survive a death world by accepting impossible odds. We survived by changing the game. That is what we are going to do. The Prometheus slipped into folded space and disappeared. Behind it, the Coalition fleet began its march toward human territory. 4,000 ships carrying the combined might of a dozen civilizations, all united to crush a species that had dared to defy them. They believed they were marching to victory. They believed they would teach humanity its place in the galaxy. They believed that their overwhelming numbers made defeat impossible. They were wrong. Captain Okonkwo stood alone in his quarters, watching the stars flow past in impossible patterns. He thought about his sister, about Kepler, about all the dead who could not be saved. He thought about the children on Harvest End who were alive because of his choices. He thought about Earth, with its 3 billion humans who had never asked to be part of a galactic war. Then he thought about the Coalition fleet, 4,000 ships crewed by beings who had families of their own, who had children and hopes and dreams, who were following orders from leaders who saw humanity as a threat to be eliminated. Could he really do what needed to be done? Could he make the choice that would change everything, knowing that there was no going back? He looked at the photograph of his sister. She smiled back at him, frozen forever in a moment before the horror began. "I promised you," he whispered, "no more innocence. Never again." The Prometheus sailed on toward the Helion Gap. In 7 days, the Coalition fleet would arrive. In 7 days, the fate of humanity would be decided. And Captain Yusuf Okonkwo would have to make the hardest choice of his life. On Earth, 3 billion humans went about their daily lives, unaware of the storm approaching. They worked and laughed and loved and dreamed. They complained about politics and weather and the price of food. They had no idea that their entire civilization hung by a thread. But they would know soon. The galaxy would know, and nothing would ever be the same. The Helion Gap was a place of nothing. No stars, no planets, no asteroids. Just empty space stretching between 2 spiral arms of the galaxy. Ships crossed it rarely because there was nothing to see and nothing to find. It was the perfect place for a confrontation that would decide the fate of civilization. The Prometheus arrived first, dropping out of folded space like a ghost materializing from shadow. Captain Okonkwo stood on the bridge, watching the emptiness through the viewports. His crew worked in tense silence, running final checks on systems they hoped would never be used. "The Coalition fleet will arrive in 4 hours," the tactical officer reported. 4,317 vessels. The flagship is the Eternal Dominion, personal vessel of Lord Kethvor. Okonkwo nodded. He had expected Kethvor to lead this attack personally. The Sovereignty Ambassador was not the kind to let others claim glory that should be his. He would want to witness humanity's humiliation with his own eyes. "Any word from the Weavers?" the captain asked. "Yes, sir." The communications officer looked troubled. "They made contact 2 hours ago. They wanted us to know something." "Tell me." "The Coalition flagship carries a reality anchor. Weaver technology. They said it was given freely, but they wanted us to understand what it does. It will lock us in normal space. Our full drive will not work. Our dimensional shields will fail. We will be just another ship." The bridge fell silent. Without its exotic capabilities, the Prometheus was still powerful. But it was not invincible. 4,000 ships could overwhelm them through sheer numbers. "Why would the Weavers tell us this?" Whitmore asked. "Are they trying to help us?" Okonkwo considered the question. The Weavers were ancient beyond understanding. They had watched civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. They did nothing without purpose. "They are testing us," he said finally. "They want to see how we respond when everything we rely on is taken away." "And how do we respond, sir?" The captain looked at his crew. These brave men and women who had followed him into the impossible. They deserved an answer. "We show them who we really are," he said. 4 hours later, the Coalition fleet dropped out of hyperspace. 4,000 ships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons already charged, their shields already raised. They had come prepared for war. Lord Kethvor stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, watching the single human vessel that waited for them. He smiled with satisfaction. The Prometheus looked tiny against the might he had assembled. One ship against an armada. The outcome was not in doubt. "Open a channel," he commanded. Captain Okonkwo's face appeared on his screen. The human looked calm, almost serene. This annoyed Kethvor. The human should be afraid. He should be begging for mercy. Captain Okonkwo, Kethvor said, you have one chance to surrender. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your ship will be dismantled. Your crew will be imprisoned. Your species will learn its place in the galaxy. Okonkwo's voice was steady. I have a counteroffer. You are in no position to make offers. Hear me out. The human leaned forward slightly. Single combat, my ship against any 10 of yours. If we lose or retreat, humanity accepts whatever terms you choose. If we win, you withdraw and we begin negotiations as equals. Kethvor laughed. The sound echoed across both ships. You expect me to accept this foolishness? I have 4,000 ships. I do not need to gamble when victory is certain. Then you have nothing to fear from the test, Okonkwo replied. Unless you are afraid that one human ship might defeat 10 of your best? The insult struck home. Kethvor's eyes burned with anger. He knew this was likely a trap. He knew the Prometheus had capabilities that could not be predicted. But his pride would not allow him to back down from a challenge issued before his entire fleet. Very well, he said. Choose your opponents. Okonkwo pointed to 10 ships at random. Those will do. Kethvor signaled the chosen vessels to advance. They moved forward eagerly, their captains hungry for the glory of destroying the infamous ghost ship. The battle began. The first ship fired a barrage of plasma torpedoes. The Prometheus did not dodge. It simply was not there when the torpedoes arrived, having moved through a dimension that the weapons could not follow. It reappeared behind the attacking vessel and reached out with fields that could not be seen. The ship's weapons shut down, not damaged, not destroyed, simply turned off at the quantum level as if someone had flipped a switch in the fabric of reality. The second ship lasted 4 seconds longer. It managed to fire twice before its engines died. It drifted helplessly, unable to move or fight. By the time the fifth ship fell, the coalition fleet was no longer laughing. They watched in growing horror as the Prometheus dismantled their champions with contemptuous ease. It moved through space like nothing they had ever seen, appearing and disappearing, striking without warning, disabling without killing. The 10th ship surrendered before the Prometheus even touched it. Its captain opened a channel and begged for mercy. Okonkwo granted it without hesitation. The terms of our agreement, the human captain said to Kethvor, you will withdraw. But Kethvor had never intended to honor the agreement. He had used the combat as a chance to study the Prometheus, to understand its capabilities. And he had learned something valuable. The ship depended on its dimensional technology. Take that away, and it became vulnerable. Activate the anchor, he commanded. Deep within the eternal dominion, the Weaver device came to life. It was not a weapon in any conventional sense. It was a statement of reality, a declaration that space would behave according to its natural laws and nothing else. The effect hit the Prometheus like a wave of force. Okonkwo felt the ship shudder around him. Warning lights flashed across every console. The full drive went dead. The dimensional shields collapsed. Suddenly, they were just a ship made of metal and hope, alone against 4,000 enemies. All ships, Kethvor broadcast, open fire. The coalition fleet obeyed with savage joy. 4,000 vessels launched their weapons simultaneously. The space around the Prometheus filled with plasma and missiles and energy beams. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. For the first time, the ghost ship took damage. The hull, designed to withstand forces that would crush planets, began to buckle under the concentrated assault. Explosions ripped through outer compartments. Crew members died at their stations, killed by enemies they could not fight. On the bridge, Okonkwo held tight to his command chair as the ship rocked around him. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. Smoke filled the air. But his eyes remained fixed on a single console. Revelation. Protocol armed. Captain, Whitmore shouted over the chaos. We cannot survive this. We have to fight back. Okonkwo shook his head. No killing. Those are my orders. Then what do we do? The captain stood. He walked to the console that controlled the Prometheus's most secret system. He placed his hand on the scanner, spoke the code phrase, and made his choice. We give them what they fear most, he said. Knowledge. He pressed the button. The Prometheus did not fire a weapon. It did not launch a counterattack. Instead, every transmitter on the ship activated simultaneously. A signal burst out across all frequencies, reaching every vessel in the Coalition fleet. The signal contained data, millions of terabytes of data, technical specifications, scientific principles, engineering blueprints. Everything needed to build a Prometheus-class vessel, laid out in complete detail. On 4,000 bridges, computers automatically received and stored the information. Coalition crews stared at their screens in confusion, then in shock, then in growing horror as they understood what they had been given. "What have you done?" Kethavor demanded. Okonkwo's face appeared on his screen, bloody but triumphant. "You feared our technology because we alone possessed it, so I have given it to everyone. Every ship in your fleet now carries the secrets of the Prometheus. Every species represented here can build their own." Kethavor's blood went cold. He understood the implications immediately. If he destroyed the Prometheus now, it would change nothing. The knowledge existed. It had already been copied a million times. It would spread across the galaxy like fire across dry grass. And it was not just the Coalition that would have it. The broadcast had been sent on all frequencies. Every species within range had received it. Friends, enemies, neutrals alike. The balance of power that had existed for 10,000 years had just been shattered. "Destroy them!" Kethavor screamed. "Destroy them now!" But his fleet hesitated, because they understood something Kethavor did not. If humanity had been willing to share their greatest secret rather than use it for conquest, then perhaps they were not the threat the Coalition believed. Perhaps they were something else entirely. Something new. Something that might be worth understanding. The guns fell silent. The Prometheus drifted in space, damaged and bleeding, but unbowed. And across 4,000 ships, crews looked at the data they had received and began to ask questions that had no easy answers. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Lord Kethavor screamed orders that no one obeyed. His moment of triumph had turned to ashes. He had come to destroy humanity, and instead humanity had given him the means to become something greater. It was an insult he would never forgive, but it was also a gift he could not refuse. The standoff in the Helion Gap had ended, not with victory or defeat, but with something that had never happened before in galactic history. Revolution. The Coalition fleet held position in the Helion Gap for 3 days. Ships that had come to destroy humanity drifted in confused silence, their crews studying the data that had been forced upon them. Arguments erupted on every bridge. Alliances formed and shattered. Nothing would ever be the same. Lord Kethavor raged aboard the Eternal Dominion. He demanded that his fleet attack. He threatened captains who hesitated. He called upon ancient oaths and sacred honor. But his power had been broken in ways that no amount of shouting could repair. Because the Coalition had not just received technology, they had received a message. Humanity, facing certain destruction, had chosen to share rather than conquer. They had been given the greatest military advantage in galactic history, and they had given it away. The Arithmeth were the first to understand. Their cold calculations revealed a truth that shook their mechanical souls. Humanity's action was not weakness. It was the most powerful strategic move possible. By distributing the technology to everyone, they had ensured that no single species could use it to dominate the galaxy. Mutual capability leads to mutual deterrence, the Arithmeth representative said in a message to his fleet. Humanity has made conquest impossible. They have forced us toward cooperation. Ambassador Chen received this message aboard the damaged Prometheus. She had arrived 3 hours after the broadcast, transported by a diplomatic vessel that had slipped through the chaos. Now she stood on the battered bridge beside Captain Okonkwo, reading the words that might save her species. "The Arithmeth are withdrawing from the Coalition," she said. "They refuse to continue hostilities." Okonkwo nodded slowly. Blood still stained his uniform. Burns marked his hands. He had lost 40 crew members in the attack. Good people who had died defending a ship that was supposed to be invincible. "Who else?" he asked. "The Frontier Alliance, the Collective of Minds, 6 other species so far. They are all leaving." Outside the viewports, coalition ships began to break formation. Some turned toward home, others simply drifted, their captains uncertain what to do next. The Grand Armada that had come to crush humanity was falling apart. But not everyone was ready to accept defeat. Lord Kethavor's face appeared on the main screen. His bronze skin seemed darker now, twisted by fury into something barely recognizable. Behind him, the bridge of the Eternal Dominion glowed with emergency lights. "You think you have won?" he snarled. "You think your clever trick has saved you? But the sovereignty of Keth does not forget. We do not forgive. This is not over, human. It will never be over." Okonkwo met his gaze without flinching. "It is over, Lord Kethavor. Look around you. Your fleet is leaving. Your allies have abandoned you. You can continue this war alone, but you will lose." "Then I will lose with honor." "No." Okonkwo's voice softened slightly. "You will lose with millions dead. Your people, mine, others who have nothing to do with our conflict. Is that what you want? Is that what your sovereignty was built to achieve?" For a long moment, Kethavor did not respond. Emotions warred across his face, pride, anger, and something else. Something that might have been doubt. "You do not understand," he said finally. "For 10,000 years my people have ruled. We have maintained order. We have kept the peace. And now you come, with your weapons that should not exist, and you offer to share them with the galaxy. You will destroy everything we built." "No," Okonkwo said. "We will help you build something better." The words hung in the silence between them. Then slowly, Lord Kethavor cut the connection. His ship turned and joined the exodus of departing vessels. The coalition was over. The Weavers spoke for the first time since the crisis began. Their voice came through every speaker on every remaining ship, a sound that seemed to exist in more dimensions than normal speech. It carried weight beyond words, meaning beyond language. "We have watched humanity since your first steps into the stars. We have tested you, as we test all young species. We gave the coalition our anchor because we wanted to see what you would do when your power was taken away. When you faced destruction with no way to fight." The bridge crew listened in stunned silence. Even Ambassador Chen, who had spoken with beings from 100 worlds, had never heard the Weavers address anyone so directly. "You chose to share. You chose to elevate your enemies rather than destroy them. You chose to end war by making it meaningless. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. This is what the elder races have forgotten." The voice paused, and when it continued, it carried something like approval. "Humanity has passed the test. You are no longer a young species to be guided and controlled. You are equals, and we believe you may be something more." The transmission ended. The Weavers said nothing else, but their words changed everything. 1 year later, the galaxy gathered on Nexus Prime for the signing of the Prometheus Accords. The Great Hall had been rebuilt for the occasion. Platforms that once held species in rigid hierarchy now floated at equal heights. Representatives from every civilization sat together, their differences set aside for a moment of history. Ambassador Chen spoke for humanity. She stood at the center of the chamber, her voice carrying to every corner. "1 year ago, we faced destruction. Our enemies came with 4,000 ships to teach us our place. They believed that might made right. They believed that power should be hoarded, that technology should be controlled, that younger species should bow to their elders forever." She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes of 100 colors and shapes. "We had the choice to fight. We could have destroyed that fleet. Our ship carried weapons that could have killed millions. We chose instead to share what we had built, not because we were weak, but because we understood something our enemies did not. The future does not belong to those who take. It belongs to those who give." The Prometheus Accords established a new order for the galaxy. Technology would be shared, not hoarded. Military power would be balanced, not concentrated. A council of equals would replace the hierarchy of elder races. Humanity would have a voice as loud as any other. Not everyone was happy. The sovereignty of Keth refused to sign, though they also refused to resume hostilities. They retreated to their core worlds and watched with bitter eyes. But they were alone now. The galaxy had moved on without them. The Prometheus itself had been towed to Earth orbit. Its damage was too severe to repair, and its purpose had been fulfilled. The ship that had changed everything would never fly again. Instead, it became a monument. 5 years after the Helian Gap, Captain Yusuf Okonkwo stood before a graduating class at the new Galactic Academy. The students came from 30 different species, united in their desire to explore the stars together. He was an old man now, his hair fully gray, his hands marked by scars that would never fade. But his eyes still carried the fire that had guided him through impossible choices. "Many of you have heard the story of the Prometheus," he said. "You know the history. You know the battles. You know how a single ship challenged an empire and won. But I want to tell you something that the history books leave out." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "On the day we shared our technology with the Coalition, I watched 40 of my crew die. Good people, brave people. They gave their lives for a plan that might have failed. They trusted me to make the right choice, and I am not sure I did." The students listened in silence. Power is not a gift. It is a burden. The Prometheus could have destroyed any fleet in the galaxy, but that power meant nothing compared to the weight of responsibility it carried. Every decision we made affected millions of lives. Every choice had consequences that would echo through history. He looked at the young faces before him, so full of hope and possibility. "You are inheriting a galaxy that humanity helped to shape. A galaxy where species work together instead of fighting. Where technology is shared instead of hoarded. Where the measure of a civilization is not how much it can take, but how much it can give." A student raised her hand. She was a Rithmith, her metal body gleaming in the light. "Captain Okonkwo," she said, "why did humanity not conquer the galaxy when you had the chance? You had the power. Many would have used it." Okonkwo smiled. It was a question he had been asked many times, and his answer was always the same. "Because the measure of strength is not what you can destroy. It is what you choose to build." Outside the Academy windows, the Prometheus hung in its memorial orbit, a dark shape against the stars. Children pointed at it and asked their parents what it was. Artists painted it. Poets wrote about it. It had become a symbol of everything humanity hoped to be. Captain Okonkwo finished his lecture and walked out into the sunlight. Around him, students of a dozen species hurried to their next classes, laughing and arguing and dreaming of the future. He thought about his sister, who had died on Kepler so many years ago. He thought about the crew members who had given their lives aboard the Prometheus. He thought about all the people who had sacrificed everything so that this moment could exist. They had built something worth building. Not a weapon, though the galaxy remembered it that way. Not a ship, though that was what it had been. They had built a future. And as the old captain walked through a galaxy at peace, he knew that the future was exactly what his sister would have wanted.